Well, hello, everybody. How's it going? How's it going, Hush Stuff? What movie? Five, four, three, two. 16 candles. Duh. Okay, so today we are talking about mental health, depression, and stigma. Hmm. Why are we talking about that, you ask? Well, I went back. When I feel like I've talked about a topic so much, I will typically go back and see how many times I've talked about it. And it's interesting to find number 77 was the first time I talked about mental health. Um, and that was the day that I met Ian, the executive director over at Grace Point Foundation. Hello to my one viewer. Thank you for joining me. I Not an easy topic to talk about, by the way, so hang in there. When I met Ian from Grace Point Foundation, it was really the first time that I said I suffered tremendously from depression when I was, well, it started when I was 19 and then went away and it came back when I was 21. So a few bouts of it. And, it was really, really tough. But I had never, since that episode 77, I'd never talked about it in a business setting. I could have never imagined that day that was the conversation I was going to have. And now next week, I will happily sponsor a table at Grace Point Foundation's event, Stronger Than Stigma. And it's funny because like that was a year ago. It feels like 5 minutes ago. So it was July, so not a year entirely, but almost. And I gotta say, like, I have spoken about it so openly to so many different people since that day. Now, of course, I've talked about it for 23 years now with many, many people, just never in a professional setting. Never something I thought I would write about in a magazine or talk about on HSN. I didn't really talk about my personal experience. I did actually, when we were doing all of our digital content, I did, but they said that they wanted to keep it light. Like, I'm not mad at you, HSN. I get it. Keep it light. Because that's the problem. Like, some people just don't want to talk about it. This is not about you, HSN, by the way. But it is so, so important to discuss. And there's so much stigma around it. It's amazing. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how surprised I am to hear people's thoughts about suicide or mental health or depression. My old boss, one of them, she's a doctor. She lost her son to suicide in December. She's a doctor. She is coming to this event with me, and I'm so grateful that she will be with me and that she's strong enough to attend because she knows that Johnny did not die in vain. That if we talk about it, we can help somebody else, right? So I had a conversation about it today. I do have lots of conversations about depression and mental health because I have the great fortitude of being happy and healthy today, right? But I promise you, I am more scared of depression than anything else in the world. Anything. I have never experienced anything in my life like it. So it's funny because people will discuss how they were depressed. My own family has done that with me. They were sad or they were depressed. It's just not the same as depression. Like, mental health issues are just different from having some moments of sadness. I'm not taking anything away from anybody that has those moments, but I know that I was in a depression so bad that I could not physically leave my house. I was so scared. And that's like crazy because today, all these years later, the first thing I did this morning was I got on my bike and I went over a bridge and I do live videos. And I was so isolated back then and I didn't talk. I know you're shocked to hear that, but I completely changed. I went from being this very outgoing, um, very strong personality, very happy child into this depression. And it's nobody's fault. I remember, people, my parents thinking that it had something to do with them, had nothing to do with anybody except what was going on inside of me and this disease that I was suffering from. So, you know, I don't know what to say, but mental health it affects so many people, and so many people are afraid to talk about it because of the stigma that gets attached to them. And it's incredible, right? I mean, think about all of the athletes and musicians and actors and actresses that have comedians who have committed suicide. It's amazing, right? Well, it's because they've suffered. Suffering in silence is very, 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 very daunting. And you don't want to talk about it. And you don't want to tell your parents or family members. You don't want them to feel bad that you feel this way. Like how, ugh. And I've heard so many people say that it is a selfish act to commit suicide. And like, really, that is a very strong statement for somebody to make that has no idea what it feels like. Um, from experience of myself and from experience of many people in my life that have suffered, it is the exact opposite. We actually think we're doing you a favor to remove ourselves from this earth. So that is very important, I think, that it probably, in our minds and our hearts, we feel like it's the most selfless thing to do is to remove ourselves. And I remember hiding pictures of myself around my parents' house when I was a little girl. Well, not a little girl, I was 20, right? And because I really thought, well, I'm so silly thinking back, like just some pictures would help them forget about me. How sad is that, right? But I gotta say, like, it needs to be spoken about. It needs to be okay to talk about. There needs to be no judgment around it. But we're a long way from there. I have heard people say things about depression and suicidal thoughts, and I almost can't believe it. So I think we all need to speak up and speak out and educate others and give hope. I mean, I could not be happier in my life today. But if I look back on where I was then, I would have never thought this day could come. I could have never thought that I'd be able to work in a big job and get promoted and then take on another big job and work in Manhattan and then move to Florida by myself and then run a practice and then create a business on my, like, in a million years, when I was feeling that way, did I think that something like this could happen to me? But it can. And I will continue to speak up whenever anybody needs me to and share my story, which is long and not the place for it here. But, ironically, the number 77 video that I did, it said something like mental health, and Gary Vee was in there. And Gary Vee's podcast today talked about how meditation will be the next big thing. Like, it's already pretty big, but we're moving into an area in 2018 where more people are speaking out and more people are working on their mental health versus physical and everything else that comes after that. Really everything starts here. Everything starts in between these ears. And if we are healthy in our minds, we can be healthy in our hearts and healthy in our bodies. But we really have to get healthy in our minds first. So, it's why I ride my bike. It's It's why I meditate. It's why I work out, because I have a very stressful life, one that I'm very blessed to live, but I have to do that because I can't afford to not have mental health and to not have mental stability. And some might argue that not very stable, but I gotta say, it's a far cry from where I used to be, especially because I'm a happy girl and so blessed and so grateful that I had help. You know, I had a therapist and I had medication, and I was only on the medication for 6 months. And I'm happy to report that I have not gone back on any of it for 22 years because I just have implemented a lot of discipline in my life. And that's one of the reasons that I work as hard as I do, because I feel blessed to be on this earth still. And I have the opportunity to help somebody else, which is actually the greatest gift in the world, is to be able to help somebody else. So this doesn't really have too much to do about business, like, sorry, or doctors. Well, actually, it does. I've had a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists in my worlds lately, and just gives me more inspiration to continue talking about this, because I think when you've had personal experience, you can really help somebody else, help them through to see the other side. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.